Okay, so that should do it. And welcome. My name's Ryan, and today I'd like to just explain my microphone setup since I've been working on it in my spare time over a number of years. I didn't really put much thought into it up until recently, but let me start from the beginning. So back in 2015, I decided I wanted to make YouTube videos for fun every now and then. And I started with my dedicated microphone in my laptop computer. But after a while I saw it to be inefficient because the quality wasn't very good, I'm not gonna lie. So I told myself when the chance came up I'd eventually invest in something better. Fast forward to 2017, when I worked in the States as a cultural exchange student. One of my colleagues gave me a parting gift. It was called the Samsung Go mic. It's this little device right here that folds up in this rectangular form factor. So on this side, it allowed you to set the area in which the little Samsung Go mic would record. So the symbol on top represents the cardioid, meaning that it records sounds from its facing forward position. And you had the omnidirectional, which is the circle symbol you see below. This one was normally the one I'd prefer to use. It recorded more sound, but it recorded more sound. It was an advantage and a disadvantage. Let me explain. So, if you have background noise in the distance, you would hear it. If you had crackling in the distance, you would hear it. If you had a small group that was meeting up and they were having a discussion in the other room, you would hear it. This was good for a while, but it got a little annoying sometimes and I'd have to do multiple takes. So even though it did the job it was supposed to, I was thinking of a way over time how I could actually make this even better. I didn't give it too much thought up until recently. The other side has a standard headphone jack connection and a mini USB to USB Type A cable. Yeah, nothing too fancy, but it got the job done. I'd definitely recommend this for first timers. But up until 6 months ago though, I started getting more serious about the audio quality because of what's been happening lately. So I decided, after doing some research, what would be an affordable and high quality microphone I could use for myself. And that's where I came across this, the BM-800. Inexpensive, professional sounding quality. Even though it's more on the affordable end, I'm told it can get the job done. So I said okay, I'd go for it. It's a studio recording kit that normally has different accessories here. Yeah, you have the microphone, yeah, and you have the other. It's like you have the pop filter, you have the arm, you have the different XLR cables. In my case, I only had one of these. I only had the XLR to headphone jack. I didn't get the male to USB XLR cable. More on that later. But out of this entire kit, everything is fairly sturdy and it's a condenser microphone system. I ordered it by itself, which was a mistake that I hadn't realized at first. The first red flag that alerted me to this mistake was this little white device here. That little white thing is the most useless part of this entire kit. It died on me within 2 days. So I thought to myself, that's terrible. That's very terrible. So what I eventually did was, I found myself going to the electronics store and I asked them for a similar one, which was of slightly higher quality. It never died on me, which was fine, but then another problem came up. When I would try to record myself, the volume would be too low, or it would be inconsistent, or I would hear hisses or a high pitch underneath what I was trying to say, which was quite annoying. So it was low volume and low quality because the circuitry inside the condenser microphone would not be properly activated by the DC current provided through the USB port. So looking into this issue more, I realized that there's a need for a device called an audio interface. But before I move to that, a side note, if I were to describe the nature of this small white sound card, you know the little train that could? This could not. It burnt, it fried, it's terrible, man. So if you're going to buy this whole kit, I suggest either getting a stronger sound card or just move to the next thing I'm about to mention right here, which is an audio interface. So for the purposes of this explanation, I'd see this next interface come up called the V8, but I've read reviews saying that it's not very good, so I didn't even bother with it. But the next best thing that came up for me is the Behringer Uphoria UMC22. It's a special and rather inexpensive audio interface that has the specific thing called phantom power. So phantom power basically describes the nature of the audio interface and how it provides sufficient current for the circuitry responsible for the I'll put the full description in the description below. Description in the description. So how this system works now is you have a dedicated mainline input for the microphone itself. You had a secondary input for an instrument, and you have an output for the headphone setup. So noticing the size of these holes, there was no direct line for a headphone jack connection. Alright, referencing back earlier to when I bought this system, but it didn't come with the male to female XLR cable, I was left with using the XLR to headphone jack system. So I also had to go back to the electronics store again and obtain a 3.5mm to 6.35mm stereo headphone jack. Well, I had to get two of them, and here's the reason why. Because I didn't have the male to female XLR cable, you see this ring right here, and you see the smaller hole in the middle. If I use the one headphone jack, the stereo headphone jack, converting it to the 6.35 that I needed to fit in the center here, even when I did that, I couldn't plug in my headphones over here because I needed another one. But even when I did that, when I tested through OBS, I got no output. So it worried me. But then I noticed the outer ring, and I noticed 3 holes on the inner ring. So I'm thinking to myself, perhaps this is not sufficient. And that's why I went and got the male to female XLR cable. I got the XLR cable and the 2 stereo headphone jacks at the same time, so I could have enough to use just in case. So then when I got back home, I changed the XLR to headphone jack cable with the male to female XLR. Then I took the jack that was on that XLR to headphone jack cable and I put it on the headphones, and I put them over here. And when I did all of that, the system works like how you see today. Like how you see today. And that's it really. Yes, man. So if you're interested in seeing all the components, calm down, Ryan. All the components that I'm using here. So you have the BM-800 studio recording kit, preferably the kit that has both the male to female XLR and the XLR to headphone jack cable. You'll see different variants, but you just have to look at each individual listing. The Behringer Uphoria UMC22, it doesn't have to be this same one because this one only suits my needs in particular. If you need a setup where two different persons are speaking, you have others out there that has the secondary input line for a second microphone. You could consider that avenue as well. And also just to make sure you have enough spare cables and stereo headphone jacks. And that's it. So this was just my neat little video on how I got this setup together. So the information as well as the list here will be provided in the description below. And as always, thank you very much. And I'll see you again next time. Next time.